Hello and welcome to the second episode of A Blind Insight. My name's Simon Hill, and once again, I will be joined by Billy Spateman to discuss my experiences and the challenges I faced living as a totally blind person in the modern world, and also what I think needs to be done to make the world a more inclusive and accessible place for people with any kind of disability. These are just my thoughts, but I'd really like to hear yours. So I will let you know how you can get in touch at the end, as well as the serious and sometimes negative talk. We will aim to have a bit of fun along the way. So I hope you enjoy. Last time that I finished college at 18 and didn't want to go to university first and foremost because I'd already been at boarding school since I was 11, so the university experience, going away from home, etc., I'd sort of already done that, and I didn't know what I'd want to study anyway if I did, so I decided I'd rather go out into the world and try and earn some money and figure out what I wanted to do for a job. And that was brought on really as well, or inspired by the fact that I'd run the tuck shop at college for a number of years by that stage, and so had got some experience with investing my own money and making a small business tick. So that was the what drove me to decide, well, I want a bit more of this really. But I found myself up against the issue that nobody really knew how to assist me in finding a job. So I tried the usual sources of assistance, the job centre, employment agencies who even claimed that they would assist people with disability to find work, but got nowhere for about 3 years, and eventually I got my break through my mum writing a letter to West Midlands Police, because I'd always had an interest in police work, but obviously being blind you wouldn't really pass the test for being a fully fledged police officer, so that was out.
Can I just ask, Simon, was it because the folks that you applied to were ignorant of how to deal with somebody in the workplace that was blind, and nothing was put in place in terms of, what would need to be done?
There seems to be, and I'm still trying to fathom this out now when we're 20 years later, but they may have the job title of disability employment advisor, etc., but there doesn't seem to be an understanding with that of how, I can't speak for people with other disabilities, but certainly as a blind person, how you would do a job. So, for instance, I think I mentioned at last time that one of the first things you get asked by everybody is, well, how are you going to use a computer?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously computers now are pretty much vital to a lot of jobs. And so if that's their sort of mindset of, well, how is a blind person going to use a computer? They don't even know of the existence of screen reading technology. Then that straight away means you're up against it, and you're having to explain, rather than just concentrate on, right, let's find you a job. It's, well, what can you do? And it's very, so you're fighting two battles really. You not only have to convince the people at interview, if and when you get one, you then have to, in the first place, you're having to convince the people that are supposed to understand this stuff.
So how was the police force different then?
Well, how it worked was that I the police happened to have a partnership with a charity called the Shore Trust, and basically the setup was that if after a meeting they agreed to take you on a basically a probation period, the Shore Trust would pay your salary, and then after the 6 months, the employer could decide if they wanted to keep you on or not. So, in other words, it wasn't costing the employer anything while things were put in place and everything. So you got the chance to show what you could do without any financial cost to them. And so happily, they were happy with the job I did, and so took me on permanently after the 6 months.
Yeah, it was a bit. Didn't the government do a thing once where it was like an apprenticeship, but the government paid the company to take the kids on, in a way, that sort of thing, in a way, like a placement, and then there was the offer of a job if everything was all right.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand that there's issue. It takes too long, to get things in place through access to work and etc. And so, from the employer's point of view, that the last thing they're going to do is pay you if you can't do the job. So, from that point of view, that for me, that is the way it needs to happen. That you have your interview or meeting, whatever you want to call it. The employer agrees that yes, we'll see what you can do, and then you get your period. You still earn a salary, so you're not wasting time. You're doing something constructive, and it's not free voluntary work. But at the end of it, hopefully, if you do the job well enough, you get to keep the job, and the employer hasn't spent time and money on it, and they've gained an employee, and you've proved a few people wrong and shown what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, that that not just with people with a disability, that can be applied to youngsters who come out of school or college and don't really know what they want to do, and that's not a criticism. That's it's very difficult to know what you want to do. Not everybody has an immediate sort of idea or may want to do something but not really know how to go about it, etc. So that was how I got started with the police, and to start with, for 2 or 3 years it was really good. They they were particularly supportive of me when I went to Beijing for the Paralympics. Made a big publicity thing of it. Gave me a special leave, so because I was away for a month and they didn't take that off my leave allowance. So I thought this is good. I've got employment, and the job had its crazy moments, which I'm going to share some with today and then going forward. But and then, as is the way, something changed somewhere where it was decided that I was answering the non-emergency calls, I should explain, and they then wanted people to do more than one role, basically, which was answer non-emergency calls, answer the 999 calls, deal with emails and more things. And unfortunately, whether I wanted to do it or not, the system wasn't going to work with JAWS, the speech software. So I had to stick to just the one thing, and then strangely little things started happening, such as I'd always kept my bag under my desk ever since I'd started, because I know where it is, and my coat on the back of my chair, so I don't have to go and find it amongst everyone else's. And then all of a sudden that wasn't okay, and could I leave my bag outside and my coat in the hallway, etc. And I'm just like, well, what's going on here? It wasn't a problem before. So in the end, and by that point I had sort of tired of the job. It had, it was what it was. It wasn't going to change, and there was nowhere I could really go with it. So I started looking around for something else, and looking back now, I realised that I actually uh, was it went quite smoothly because I managed to find a job with a bank. I won't name names, but working for their customer services. So it was still on the phones, but less calls every day and more admin work. So it felt like you were able to do more with the call. So I moved on to that and did that for a few. I mean, again, it took about 6 months from me being offered the job to me being able to start. But because I still had a job, it didn't worry me so much. But obviously, if you don't have a job and you think, well, I've been offered a job, but now I've got no idea when I'm going to start, then that's very difficult and unfair. So,
did you have to go through, say, transferring from the police to the bank? Did you have to go through a pre-assessment so they, from their end, that to know what they'd got to do in order to cater for you in a way?
Yeah. So how it works or should work is you do the interview, and at the interview they're meant to make any adjustments that will not help you pass the interview, but give you a fair crack
Fair
at
chance,
it.
yeah.
So, like, for instance, if it's difficult though because you don't know what the interview is going to involve. So, if, for example, they want you to, like for the banking job, I had to do a role play, so pretend to be taking a call with a customer. So, the scenario, I said, well, I'll either need that in Braille so I can read it and follow it, or I'll need somebody, not the interviewer, but another person there to read me the scenario. And then sort of help me if I get, if I get stuck on notes or something.
Yeah.
So, so I had the workplace assessment, as they call it, and then that's when they ascertain, okay, so in my case, I need screen reader software, I need a Braille display to help me read what's on the screen if I'm talking to a customer, and anything else such as a special headset or things in Braille, whatever I feel I will need to in order to do the job effectively. So that was done. That then goes off to Access to Work, who are a government department who are where funding's set aside to be given to employers to help purchase equipment, and pay for instance, it can help us all help with travel to work, because for instance, I live in Stourbridge, but the jobs are in Birmingham, so no matter how much I was earning, it would have made a pretty hefty dent in my in my budget to because I like to get taxis to work and back, because, well, certainly at the police I was working strange shifts sometimes, and and at the end of the day, public transport is, if it's reliable, then it's still a headache if you can't see what you're doing, I think. So the last thing I wanted was to get to work and then be too stressed out to go on the phones and start talking to people. So so that's how it's meant to work, that the Access to Work provide the financial assistance, and then once that's all agreed, you can start. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way, and even after all of that, there is still the possibility that the employer will turn around and say, well, unfortunately, despite people's best efforts, the equipment isn't compatible with speech software, so we can't move forward with the job for you.
It's a struggle all the way, isn't it?
So, like I say, I moved on to the bank after the police, and then I was there for about 5 years, and then again changes came about, which is always spells trouble, unfortunately, because it means a change of system, a change of anything can interfere with what you've got set up. So basically they decided to move our department for the work to be done in Manchester, and for the Birmingham department to become mortgage customer services. So that was, again, there's a few bumps in the road with systems, but managed to get transferred over to do that okay. And then after a while of doing that, they were recruiting mortgage advisors, which was more money and a proper qualification and something that could be a career. So people sort of said, you're good at this. You should become a mortgage advisor. So I'm like, well, okay, I'll give it a go. And I thought, well, it's internal, so I don't lose anything by applying. So I did, and was offered the job. So I then had to do 6 months. No, it wasn't 6 months. Sorry, about a couple of months of training to get the qualification. So exams, etc. Passed those, and then had to do some internal tests whereby you get assessed by the managers to make sure that you're compliant and on the phones and everything. Passed all of those, so I thought I was on my way, and then went into work on a Monday morning in 2017 to be told we're changing the system, and the system we want to use doesn't work with your screen reader, so we can't continue. You can't continue in the role. So
it was as blunt as that, really.
Well, there was no warning.
No.
I went in on the Monday morning thinking, the timing was crazy, really. I passed my final test on the Friday, so I went in on the Monday morning thinking, here we go, I'm on my way. But called into a meeting and told, I couldn't carry on, essentially. So, and to add to the anxiety, I'd just completed the purchase of my house on the Friday as well. So, you couldn't make it up in terms of the timing.
Yeah, great timing, wasn't it?
So that.
So was there no appeal that you could have done, or is that again that adds to your stress, I suppose?
Well, I'd come so far that and put so much time into it that I was like, I'm not letting this go. And the thing was that all the issue was that they wanted customers to, rather than sending their documents for a mortgage to underwriters, they wanted them to upload them, and so that the mortgage advisor could be looking at them during a call. And the system they picked for it wouldn't work with a screen reader. But I said, there's workarounds here. Either I can get a colleague to come and look at the documents for me before the call and make the notes I need to make, or I can have a support worker for X amount of hours a week to sit with me and help me. There's ways around this. I don't need to give up on all the work I've put in. But they weren't having it. Basically, they wouldn't engage me in any meetings or discussion. I got legal assistance and essentially was all set to go to tribunal. And the solicitor said that they were confident I would win, but the trouble is that even if you win the tribunal against the employer, this may have changed since. I really hope it has, but I don't believe it has. That even if the judge finds in your favour, the employer still doesn't have to make the changes that you're asking for. If after the first judgment they don't do it, they still have to. You have to go to another tribunal to get the to enforce it. So in other words, you've got to go to at least 2 tribunals to get anything enforced, and obviously that takes time. Luckily, and I would urge anybody to do this, to make sure you've got legal expenses on your home insurance, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to make any challenge. So that meant that it didn't cost me any legal fees. But it was, it dragged out for months and months, and in the end, no matter how determined or unfair you think it is, it gets on top of you, and you just think, and in the end, of course, you think, well, do I really want to work for these people anymore anyway?
Yeah.
So,
I suppose that's the point. If you did get force them to give you a job, it's the atmosphere you work in, isn't it?
Well, the reality is if you're then deemed as a troublemaker, or even though you're just standing up for yourself, and no matter how much people say you're in the right, they're the ones that pay you wage. And like I said, and I'd already experienced with the, back at the police with, it may not be anything direct or obvious, but they can still make your life more awkward with, little things, and in the end make you think, I don't want to come here anymore. So yeah, so ultimately, long story short, I was like, well, if we can come to some sort of financial settlement, then I'll take that and move on. And so that's what I did. And I made the sort of mistake of thinking, well, I can apply for, I've got a qualification still, I can apply for a mortgage advisor's job elsewhere. And so that's what I tried to do. But then I never imagined that sort of, 6-7 years down the line, I would still be out of work. And that was the reality that that came about.
Yeah. And do you find it's a similar experience with people that are blind? Is it a struggle all the time?
Oh yeah, it seems to be pot luck, as in, if you happen to, if even within like for example, even within a big organisation like the civil service, so many departments. So one person who applies for a job with, for argument's sake, HMRC, might do okay, but then somebody else who gets a job with, say, DWP, has a right nightmare. So there's just no consistency of, the processes are there. I don't doubt that, but for whatever reason, they're not understood or followed by the people that are meant to be sorting things out. And that's where I think, as I mentioned last time, that there's employers will give all the disability confident statement and everything, but yes, there may be people within that organisation that understand what needs to be done, but they're not communicating it to the people on the ground doing the recruitment, and that's where it breaks down.
Do they sort of, I don't know whether there's a legal amount of people that they have to employ who are blind, disabled, so do they comply to that and then that only in order to tick the boxes, or is that really swept under the rug?
I think I'd have to double check on it, but if there is a quota, then the problem is that disabled is used to cover so many things. So, for example, if it's a case between employing some, myself, who needs, before I can start a job, I need screen reader software on a computer with a system that works, and other things before I can even start. That is far more complicated than somebody saying, well, I've got a bad back, so I need a chair with a thicker cushion. Yeah. So that's obviously, oh yeah, we can do that. They buy a chair and off that person goes. That they can sit in front of a computer the same as, other people. And that's the issue. Unfortunately, if you're blind, there's far more that needs to be put in place than just simply going out and purchasing, a certain chair or a wrist rest or a lower desk or, whatever it may be. So that's where I think if the quotas are met, then there may be, but there's not a quota, say, X amount of blind people need to be, you need to have in your organisation or anything specific. Yeah.
You've got some track. You brought some tracks in. Victor Hello and Victor Reaction. So this is interesting. So what's all this about?
Yeah. So I mean, it's not my intention, but unfortunately, talking about this stuff is, not a lot of fun. But so I thought, as I mentioned before, I can share some of my stories mainly from my time with the calls I took at the police, and then people can also chime in with theirs if they've got any. But I thought I'd call it Insane Stories. And basically, when I was sitting there taking a crazy phone call, I would often think to what one of my favourite characters from comedy would say, because he's been branded a grumpy old man, but personally I think he was a sane man driven to despair by the world around him. So I've to adjudicate the story, I've got got some Victor Meldrew to come along and do that.
Okay, well, we'll just get him to say hello first, shall we?
Hello.
There you are.
There he is. I miss that voice, I really do. So, short and brief, this first one, because time's cracking on. But, so, the first insane story is that it was actually taken by one of my colleagues, but I was in the room at the time, and so I'm sitting there doing whatever I'm doing, and then all of a sudden you hear because you can sort of tell if someone's on a bizarre or tricky call, and you hear this person say, "On a pigeon," and so ears prick up. I'm like, "What?" And anyway, the long and short of it was that somebody had rang up and wanted to know if the police could put a restraining order on pigeons.
All pigeons, or obviously he's getting harassed by pigeons.
But one's in their particular garden, but if either a pigeon or pigeons in general. But the thing about it is you can't dismiss, however ridiculous it is, you have to find a polite way of dismissing it, and so you end up staying on the call for ages. And this poor person was on the call for I think about 20 minutes or something, just trying to say, well, I appreciate you find them annoying, but we can't, the police cannot enforce or arrest pigeons. It's so yeah. What do you reckon, Victor?
Pigeons? What in the name of sanity?
There we are. That was his clack. What is the name of sanity? That was his catchphrase.
Well, the thing is, if you ask people, they'll say that it was. I don't believe it, but I don't. That wasn't my favourite. In the name of sanity was my favourite.
Yeah, fantastic.
So there we go. That's hopefully made a few people chuckle. So we'll have another one of those next time. And again, if you want to send yours in, we'll give out the details of that at the end. But yeah. So now moving on to the comeback or common sense feature that I wanted to do. So Mr. Henry Priestman once again to sing us into that.
Oh, come back, common sense. Oh, send me a postcard from wherever you go. Tell me what it's like there, I really want to know. And the world's gone insane ever since you disappeared. Hey, common sense, how I wish you were here. Hey, common sense, yeah, I wish you were here.
So this week, or this episode, we're not weekly yet, but I thought I'd talk about my concerns about the way technology is creeping in and taking over the workplace at the expense of humans. Personally, and I've already touched on obviously how technology has ruined my progress in work, but I find it very disturbing now and sad that when even people who are in jobs don't seem to be aware or think about the fact they're actually talking themselves out of a job every time. If you phone up a call centre or try to go into a bank or whatever it may be, or even a shop, a supermarket, and they push you in the direction of, have you gone online, or go to the automated checkout, or go and use the machine, I'll show you how to use the machine. And I'm thinking, the day's going to come when you're not needed anymore, and then what? You're going to be out of a job. The machines are going to be doing it all, and then how many more people will that result in being unemployed? Certain jobs will disappear forever, i.e., checkout staff, bank bank cashiers, post office cashiers, even as someone who's worked in a call centre, it's. I wouldn't. If somebody rang me up, I would want to show that I can sort this out. You don't need to go off and go online.
Press 6, press 7, press 8, press 7. Yeah, it drives me. My big bugbear at the moment is with most of the massive, big supermarkets is alternative prices. If you want to have one of their cards, you pay about £3 less than if you don't want one of their cards. And I stood in an aisle the other day and I said, I buy this thing, or I've bought this thing for years and years and years. You are now telling me that if I don't have one of your cards, I've got to pay £3.80 for it. But if I get one of your cards, it's £1.50. Surely that's something that's, impinging on my human rights to buy that article. You're forcing me to want. Well, you get advantages that I don't want the advantage. I just want to buy that item. And, they get quite indignant about it.
Well, they seem to forget the fact that, and this is where, and why supermarkets and the big organisations are able to push the smaller ones, aside, because they may not make a profit on that individual. So if they're selling it normally for whatever, £3, but then if you sign up to each and get it for £1.50, well then either they're making enough profit still on the £1.50, in which case why are they charging £3, or they're just using their preying on people's loyalty or abusing their position really, in saying, okay, we're not making a profit on it if you have it for £1.50, but we're assuming that you're going to buy other things which we will make a profit on. And obviously the smaller shops and the smaller businesses can't compete with that because they don't set, if you're pick whatever scenario you want, but if you're a small business, a small corner shop, and you sell a variety of things, but you can't possibly stock and sell the same amount as a supermarket does, and you have to charge what you charge because you've still got your own, your electric to pay, your suppliers, etc., etc. So, you charge what you have to charge to pay all of that, and get a bit for yourself at the end of it. And whereas the supermarkets, because they, can afford to sell in so much bulk and volume, they can cut the prices, and in the end, make the profit, and that's where the issue is. But like I say, for example, I discovered the other day that it's an ongoing thing, isn't it, with banks in particular now. They're disappearing. You keep hearing that more and more branches are being shut and etc. And people saying, well, there are still businesses out there that take cash. That markets. So many people say they're like a market. Well, markets take cash, and towns like Stourbridge and towns around here, they, I believe they still have markets now and then.
Yeah, they do. Blackheath Market is massive. Dudley Market, Briley Hill Market. Yeah, and I did read an article that whether it's because of the economic situation, people are veering back towards using cash more now because they feel in more control of their own money rather than carding it all over the place.
Well, it's easy, isn't it? You hear constantly how people get into trouble with money because, you swipe or whatever else, and it's not real, is it? It's not the same as going out with £50 in your wallet or your purse, and then when it's gone, it's gone. And that I feel that's a big reason why the issue with people's debt and things has got out of control, because at least with cash, once it's gone, it's gone. And but my point is that these the banks go in. So what are people supposed to do with their cash? There's a branch in you live in Briley Hill, but there's a branch in Wolverhampton. Well, it's.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they live in Longbridge Way, and they've closed all the branches of a particular bank around there. So the nearest one that they can go and bank at is the one in town, in Birmingham. And these are elderly people who don't want to make the trip into Birmingham.
Well, again, and this is again with the reason I wanted to talk about this is because do these people, do they not have elderly relatives or, people who, even in this day and age, struggle with technology? I mean, even if you're young, technology is a headache, it's not about, how old you are. But the point is there needs to be, you can't just force people to go down a route, and you wouldn't mind, it wouldn't be so bad if it was quicker. But if you ring up somewhere and even if you get through after about an hour, that's still quicker than you go online and send in an email or whatever, and they say, we'll get back to you in about 10 days.
Yeah.
So it's not quicker. It just, so, and all that's going to happen, like I say, is that I just wish people would think, hang on a second, if I keep doing this, I'm going to be out of a job, because, and this was illustrated, sadly, in the post office scandal.
Exactly, yeah.
Because what was that about? That was about people taking the word or believing technology rather than the humans. And it's taken this long for people to sort of wake up and admit that, oh yes, that was wrong. But why was that the case in the first place?
Yeah, exactly.
It just, and there's going to be so much. And what I'd say to business owners or the decision makers is, think about it. If you do get rid of the humans in face of technology, if the technology does go wrong, there won't be any humans to blame then.
No. Is access into buildings any better now, or just very quickly?
It's difficult for me to say on that, really, because I guess it's more. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be able to walk up steps and through doors, etc. I think what is becoming an issue is that, again, if receptionists are being replaced with boxes that get you to sign in, then of course I can go up to them, but I wouldn't have a clue how to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is and it will be an issue in certain places because of wheelchair access, etc. But yeah, definitely. I mean, again, that's something else. If you get rid of the human managing the front desk for you, not everybody is going to want or be able to interact with a box on the wall or whatever, or or a tablet or whatever it may be. So it would be interesting to hear from wheelchair users and people with mobility issues that what their experience of that is, because it's more difficult for me to comment on that one.
So if you give your email out, and I'll give the radio email out, and if there are anybody who's got any kind of issue, really, just email in, and then we can perhaps discuss it. Or if there's somebody who wants to come on and be part of the programme, we can do that. So how's the best way to contact yourself, in a way?
Yeah, so my email address is simonhill_6@hotmail.com. And I am probably going to set up a Facebook page for a Blind Insight as well. But when that's done, I'll let people know. But yeah, simonhill_6@hotmail.com at the moment.
And you might feel that your story ain't, interesting, but every story is interesting, really. And the more that it can be brought to the fore, then obviously it can raise awareness, really.
Well,
sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I appreciate me sitting here rambling about my stories. Some people might, switch off to, but I just hope that, rather than suffering or getting frustrated and climbing the walls, at the challenges that come up, like I say, whether it's regarding finding work, whether it's about accessing, whatever it may be, talking about it, putting it out there for other people to hear, hopefully the right, people who can make a difference will hear it, and that's the aim.
And even if there's one person out there that it affects and gets in touch, then that's great, because it's the first sort of stone across the river, really, to raise awareness in a way, isn't it?
So there we go. Restraining orders on pigeons. Some stories just stick with you, don't they? So I hope you enjoyed the second episode. If you have any stories for insane stories or topics you'd like us to discuss in Comeback Common Sense, then please get in touch with those. And also your experiences of the challenges you faced as a person with a disability. So you can email myself, simonhill_6@hotmail.com, and we will aim to have you aim to discuss your experiences on the show. Even better, if you'd like to appear on the show as a guest, then also let us know. So until the next time, take care and stay sane.